Hey everybody, welcome to this presentation on healthy holiday eating, presented to you by RockFit. Ah yes, 'tis the season. 'Tis the season for pumpkin pie, whipped cream, mashed potatoes, and loads of gravy. Yum. It's funny because during this time of year, a lot of us fat loss practitioners in the health and wellness industry like to have this joke that people love going on the seafood diet. The seafood diet, you ask? Well, that's the diet where you see food and then you eat it. So much for having a balanced diet over the holidays, huh? Well, if you haven't tuned me out so far, you might be asking yourself, what's the big deal? I mean, it's the holidays. We should be enjoying ourselves, right? We can just take care of those extra pounds once New Year's comes around and we'll make sure to take care of that resolution. Well, I'm glad you asked that question because researchers at NIH and Brown University asked themselves the same thing. What's the big deal? And what their studies showed was that not only is it true that we as adults gain the most weight over the holidays, but that the main reason why is due to hunger. Hunger is the biggest reason why people gain weight over the holidays. To add to the situation, those of us who are overweight tend to gain the most weight over the holidays. People who are overweight tend to have feelings of hunger, cravings, and an overall loss of self-control when it comes to the food they eat. And their research also showed that people who gain weight over the holidays kept that weight 1 year later. So if you have that New Year's resolution of hitting the gym and going on a diet, guess what? That's not going to stick, but the weight that you gain over the holidays is going to stick. That's what the big deal is. So the question we have going into the rest of this presentation is, can we control hunger? If hunger is indeed the main reason why people gain weight over the holidays, is there a way to control it? If you ask Homer here, he's not really going to care because he's going to try to get as much food as he can get his hands on. However, our answer to this question is yes. We can control hunger by promoting our own body's fat-burning hormones. Homer's a little confused by this, but if you are at home, not to worry, we're going to clear things up for you. First, let's take a look at the hormonal effects of food. Here on this slide, we have the three main building blocks of food: carbohydrates, proteins, and dietary fat. First, let's take a look at carbs. Carbs stimulate our insulin levels, and insulin is the body's master fat-storing hormone. When our insulin levels go through the roof, then our bodies are primed to store fat, and nothing sends our insulin levels sky high as much as starchy carbohydrates. Starchy carbs are white, floury, sugary, heavily processed foods that are pretty much void of almost all nutritional value. They leave us feeling hungry, and this leads to us overeating. This is in stark contrast to complex carbohydrates like whole grains, vegetables. These carbs that are complex are full of fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and instead of leaving us hungry, they help us feel full for a longer period of time. So there's a big difference between starchy carbs and complex carbs, and as you can see, complex carbs are the way to go. Next, let's talk about proteins. They stimulate our body's glucagon hormone, and glucagon is what signals our body's fat release and fat burning to take place. Proteins also take longer to digest, so we feel full for a longer period of time. And finally, we have fat, which can be combined with either proteins or carbs, and they usually are in our diet. Now, believe it or not, dietary fat in and of itself is mostly neutral, but when you combine it with proteins and carbs, then it has a hormonal effect on the body that we're going to discover in just a few moments. So what happens when you combine these three building blocks of food? Because that's what normally happens when we make our plate. Well, let's take a look at the combination of starchy carbs and fat. This is the absolute worst combination for fat burning. What it really does is it primes our bodies to store fat, and this combination is what we believe to be the main reason why we gain weight over the holidays, because this leads to us feeling hungry. It sends our insulin levels through the roof, but because there's no nutrition there, we are left hungry soon thereafter consuming these sorts of foods. Examples of these foods could be mashed potatoes and gravy, mashed potatoes and butter, Christmas cookies, any sort of sweet pie. When you're combining that carb and fat, that is really what's going to lead it towards us gaining weight. So we want to try to avoid or cut back on these foods as much as possible. They should not be the main thing in our meals or on our plates. Instead, what we should be having a lot of is plenty of lean animal protein combined with complex carbohydrates such as vegetables. We have some green vegetables, some orange colored carrots down there, sweet potatoes. Those are complex carbohydrates that have a lot of nutrition, and when you combine that with the slow digesting protein, we get a lot more bang for our buck when it comes to our foods. It's going to help us feel hungry, feel satisfied, and prevent hunger when we have these foods together. So this is a much better combination to go when we build our plate over the holidays. What happens when you combine protein and fat though? You would think that because you have fat on your plate, such as when you have gravy on top of turkey, that this is going to cause you to store fat. Well, actually, believe it or not, this combination is more fat burning than it is fat storing. It's a much better way to go if we're trying to prevent from getting hungry, and it's a lot better than combining starchy carbs and fat. So here are some holiday tips to keep you from getting hungry over the holidays, which will in turn prevent you from gaining weight. First of all, try and do your best to eat protein at every single meal. We understand this seems like a rather far-fetched or excessive suggestion, but it really works even if you have protein-based snacks throughout the day. Secondly, avoid eating carbohydrates alone. In other words, don't just eat carbohydrates by themselves unless they're vegetables. We're talking specifically about those starchy carbs. If you eat them by themselves, you're going to get hungry soon thereafter and you're going to want to eat some more. Third, really avoid combining that starchy carb with the fat. That's like throwing gasoline on a fire, except there's no actual burning going on, only fat storing. And finally, if you're going to combine fat with anything, combine it with protein, because that's going to be more fat burning than fat storing compared to the combination of starchy carbs and fat. Here are some eating strategies that we'd like you to keep in mind. We're going to go to parties and lots of special events over the holidays. We know this and we want you to enjoy yourselves. So it's good to have a plan going into these events so that we don't overeat or get hungry. And specifically this one is a really good one. And I like this suggestion of avoiding skipping meals before you go to a party or event because it hits close to home. My grandfather, whom I love dearly, his whole life, ever since far back as I can remember, he loves to avoid eating as much food as possible during the day when he has a party coming up at night, because he always says he likes to quote unquote save space for that party. Well, we're telling you that you don't want to save space for that party because you're going to get hungry and then you're going to eat a lot of those foods that are not going to be ideal for you or anybody once you get there. So try and eat small meals throughout the day, frequently, 4 to 6 times. This is going to help prevent you from getting hungry and overeating at the party, and it's also going to stop what we call the all or nothing mentality. This is what happens when you go to an event or you go somewhere out to eat and there's a food that you know you shouldn't be having, but at the same time you really want it, and it's this back and forth pull in your head between do I want it, I can't have it, oh but I want it. And what happens? Eventually you cave in and you can have a lot of it, right? Well, if you eat frequently throughout the day, you're less likely to have that mentality, and instead you may start asking yourself questions such as, should I have that? How much of that should I have? Maybe I can wait till later to have it. Maybe I can have it later on in the week. Those are questions that are the complete opposite of the all or nothing mentality, because you are now starting to make decisions and choices that are going to help you identify how much of certain foods you can have and when you should have them. Eat before you actually go to the party. So about an hour or two before you head on out, make sure you have something like a protein-based snack or a protein shake, or maybe some veggies and a few pieces of lean animal protein. Something like celery or carrot sticks and peanut butter is a good choice, or apple and peanut butter, or even tuna and let's say one of your favorite fruits or vegetables. Something like that that's simple, is going to fill you up a little bit so that when you get there you are not feeling ravenous. An additional strategy you can go for is to make sure that you go into a party, and when you see that buffet table of food right in front of you, you know, that long table where people form lines, go after serving yourself the proteins and vegetables first. Have as many proteins and veggies on your plate only. Eat all of them, and then about 20 minutes after you finish eating, if you're still hungry and you want a little bit more food, then head on back over and grab about 5 to 10 bites of starchy carbs. That way you're less likely to overindulge on the starchy carbs the second time you go around to the table. And finally, let's be honest with ourselves. We know that we're going to have desserts. We know that we're going to have sweets over the holidays. This is almost unavoidable. But there is a way that you can moderate how many sweets you have any time that you're faced with them. And that's by measuring your desserts in bites. Have about 3 to 5 bites of dessert whenever you really want to have some sweets. It's better not to snack on desserts, but if you have a meal and then you want to have a dessert, have about 3 to 5 bites worth. This will help you avoid this mentality that you either can or cannot have something. Measure it in about 3 to 5 bites. That'll help sort of cater to your sweet tooth, and then call it a day. And then wait till next time when you're faced with wanting a dessert, you'll be able to measure it in 3 to 5 bites as well. Thank you so much for watching this presentation on healthy holiday eating. Rockfit would like to wish you happy holidays and a happy new year. And if you have any questions, you're always welcome to post them on our Facebook page. And that can be found at facebook.com/GetRockFit. Thanks for watching, everybody.